My question is very specific as far as when I grew up. I had a lot of pain, childhood pain. I had a cleft palate, which then manifested into addictions and different things to cope and deal with that, and the pain of bullying or being thrown in the bushes or hurt or, different things as a child. So my wondering now, as I've done all this work and very specific and deliberately creating, find that sometimes I feel like I've felt those feelings so hard and so tough and for so long that they come back. Things will trigger them or something. I'm like in this great place and all of a sudden something triggers.
That's logical, isn't it? But it's easier in the more substantial place you stand as it's triggered to find the path of least resistance and therefore soothe it and get out ahead of it than it was when you were standing in the middle of the bullying or the trauma, the certain unfairness. In other words, it does get easier and easier, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Especially as you become conscious and you're creating joy and you're moving forward and you have that experience and you're realizing, okay, this is what I'm creating, this is where I'm at, I'm in tune, and it just seems that I want to be able to move past that where it no longer affects me.
You've uncovered many things that we want to talk about, and it activated a lot of things in the room, so many people are relating to what you're talking about too. So let's have a brief but really good conversation about this. So the most significant thing that we want to say is that, and we love moving into this place, and you're right here where you're going to get it easily.
All right.
Is that when you're living through some of that stuff, it seems unfair, unnecessary, and for a long time it sort of still feels that way. So you feel defensive about it, guarded and defensive, and maybe even questioning others who were involved or questioning your own response to it. None of that does any good. In other words, it's better to just step back and say, that happened, and just kind of leave it at that.
It's more like old feelings that just show up. It's like
old feelings that are new again. And so they're old vibrations that were knee-jerk responses to old conditions that under very different conditions get triggered again. And so it's the perpetuation of it. It keeps it going to some extent. And it doesn't need to, but we want to explain some things here that will make it easier for you to break that chain of pain. One day a woman was talking about her mother or her mother-in-law or someone, and it went on for a while, and so we started looking around for her mother because it felt so present. Like, is she under your chair? Is she behind the curtain? And she wasn't in the room, but she might as well have been because the conversation had activated all of it, so it was still negatively impacting our friend, even though her long ago reason for those feelings was no longer adding fuel to the fire. And so we offered the analogy that it's like, imagine yourself walking forward and you're spewing a sort of inky red mist. And every time you exhale, you spread that inky red mist. So every step forward, there's more mist that's in your way and more mist that's in your way and more mist that's in your way. But at any point, you could stop spewing it, and in time, it would dissipate and you'd walk out of it. But most people don't stop spewing it because they keep remembering and they keep feeling the injustice of it, and they don't understand their point of attraction or they wouldn't do it. So that's part of this conversation. But this is the good part that we really wanted to get to with you, and that is that if there's something going on in your experience and you don't like it and you don't find a way of getting out ahead of it, you don't take the bounce. You don't take the bounce that your inner being already took and then go the path toward the solution, but you stay focused in the direction of the problem. Don't worry, it will get bigger. Because law of attraction says that what's active in your vibration must continue to increase. So one of the most wonderful things about that is, first of all, as it gets bigger, it becomes more obvious. But if you still don't notice it, it becomes more obvious. Eventually, it becomes big enough that it is obvious. And a wonderful thing happens to someone like Esther or someone like you who understand these principles and who get how this universe works and who understand law of attraction, is that it can reach the place of such absurdity that you realize that it's time to take another approach to it, that this approach just is not going to work. We so love it when you reach that place because you're hard after a solution by focusing on the problem, which means you're not under the influence of source, you're under the influence of the problem. And so you're hard after it until at some point it has to occur to you, my solution is a bigger problem than the problem that the solution was supposed to solve. The very thing that was supposed to solve it is now the biggest problem. You have so much evidence of that in your world right now, where some little problem gets focused upon and just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point of absurdity. You get what we're talking about?
Yeah. I think it's always that sense of, I know I can be more, do more, have more, experience more, and I just feel like it's...
But feel the yearning and the wanting in that statement. I know I can be more, which implies I'm not enough. I know I can be more, which says I should have already been more, and I'm mad at myself for not being more. And so even though you think you're making a positive statement, you're focused on a problem, and that problem is becoming more right now. And so how might you get...
Subtle, like you said, like I've heard in your sayings before, you talk about it being sort of subtle, like I don't want to be in debt, I don't want to be in debt, beating the drum of that thing more than the others, so to speak.
You understand the concept of getting out ahead of it? When you know what you don't want, you've launched a rocket, and the rocket is out ahead of you. And your inner being joined that rocket, and so your inner being, the larger part of you, and the attraction that's coming to that rocket and to your inner being and to your vortex, it's all right now conceivably out ahead of you. If you're still feeling negative emotion, it is for sure. So how could you begin moving in the direction of that instead of it being out ahead of you? Well, for one, stop doing the thing you do that keeps you from moving in the direction of it. Try to find more statements that feel more like that. And the way you do that is, in fact, the only way that you're successful at doing that in the moment when you're trying to find a path of less resistance is by trying to find a way to think about it that feels better in the moment. But there's another way. This is the easy way, which humans often think is not a good idea. You've been taught that if you go the easy way, you're lazy. You've actually been taught that the path of least resistance is not your friend, which is ridiculous. That would be the same thing as saying, you know, your Earth really shouldn't spin in its orbit the way that it does. That's far too easy. Or water shouldn't run downhill. Or when you jump off cliffs, you should not fall down. In other words, path of least resistance and understanding it is a wonderful thing. And working against that flow of natural ease is always what causes the tension within you. So let's talk about some specifics and we'll show you what we mean.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not clear on that question.
Well, under what conditions, what happens to you that makes you decide that things can be better for you? What kinds of things are happening that get you focused in that way?
I guess an example would be where I am in my business right now as opposed to where I think I should be or could be, knowing all the things I know, having had all the experiences I've had, why I'm not further along or why I haven't developed to where I think I should be or want to be.
All right, so there are only two possible answers to that question. One is you haven't launched any rockets of desire, but that can't be, you have. The other has to be that you're not moving in the direction of your desire. You're taking score about where you are. You're looking at what is and trying to solve what is. So you're leading us right to where we wanted to go, and here's where it is. Hold the idea in your mind of getting out ahead of something. Let's say you got up and you meditated and you tuned in and you move into your day and you're out ahead of it and things go well that day. You're out ahead of it. But let's say you didn't get tuned in, you usually don't, and you just kind of stumble into the day and then you react to what's going on. That's not out ahead of it. So getting out ahead of it means hook to the awesome power first and then. It doesn't mean don't take action, and it doesn't mean don't say words, and it doesn't mean don't live life, and it doesn't mean don't have problems. It doesn't mean don't have contrast. It just means tap into this energy stream and then. Well, that's easy to say if you're already tapped in, but every day you could be tapped in and you might not be, and many people aren't. And so how are you gonna get tapped in if you're not tapped in? So follow the logic in this hard way. I'm not tapped in, I don't feel good for whatever reason, I'm in a bad mood about something, some information has come to me, it's real, I'm not making it up, I'm having a knee-jerk reaction to it. Oh, I should get tuned in, tapped in, turned on. Not gonna happen. under those conditions. It's, oh, well, I'll just think good thoughts. Every time you pick up any stick that has a good thought on that end, the other end comes up too. And so you get nowhere. You just spin in your juices, and then you decide you're a failure because you've been trying and it isn't working. So introduce the idea of getting out ahead of it. Let's say that what we just described has happened. What are you going to do about it? Well, it's possible that if you've had success in quieting your mind when you meditate, that you could put yourself in a quiet room and listen to something like the air conditioner or something that doesn't make you think of a lot of things. It is possible that no matter what's going on in your world, that if you have become accustomed to finding connection through meditation, you could. But for most people, you're not going to get another run of this until you've had a good night's sleep. Because in your slumber, the momentum softens. And when you awaken, you have an opportunity then to quiet your mind and go into meditation. So, what's the advantage of that? Well, picture this vortex with everything you want in it. And your inner being is there in that vibration. And we've been saying to you, just get into the vortex. Well, that's a hard thing to conceive of. And so then we began asking you to imagine yourself standing next to your vortex. And your vortex is operating at a very high frequency with no resistance that is discernible to you. And if you have resistance, then your vibration and the vibration of your vortex are nowhere near each other. It's like your radio stations have to line up. Your transmitter and receiver have to line up or there's no connection. So if you're ornery and your inner being is joyful, there's no connection that you're going to be aware of. But if you have meditated before anything went wrong, so you didn't dig a big hole you're trying to climb out of, and you started out feeling pretty good and your vibration, you allowed it to rise because of meditation, now you're on the same frequency and now something can occur to you. You'll receive an impulse. But this is the thing that we really want to emphasize here. If you get this, you're home free about everything forevermore. And we believe it is possible for you to hear this, especially by the end of this day. So since there's no resistance, and now you're resting in the vibration of everything that your inner being knows about you, what does that translate to in more general terms? Well, first of all, your inner being has such unequivocal and momentous, meaning momentum, love for you, that if you're not doing that thing you do that blocks your awareness of that, you very likely will feel that. And it will translate to you as well-being or ease. Esther will just smile and feel the pleasure of it. You're in that receptive mode, so to speak. You know, earlier when we said we want you to discover while we're here together today the incredible or awesome power of non-resisted thought. The awesome power of non-resisted thought. Now, we want you to change one word in that. We want you to feel for the awesome pleasure because you're with us. We don't want you to find that power and then use it to fix problems. Because when you find that power and you try to get more money with it or get whatever with it, now you lose your connection. And so the power is turned to mush. But if you're reaching for the pleasure of it and discovering that, now that pleasure is powerful. But let it be for the moment of the pleasure, not for what you're going to do with it. Now you've got it. Can you feel the distinction? It's a huge distinction. So now, you woke up, you feel pretty good, you meditated, you allowed your vibration to rise, and now, since you have no intention of using the awesome power to make something happen, now you're not a maniac trying to think things into being. You're not all tuned in and now using the power to orchestrate the universe. It's not like that at all. Instead, you're in alignment with it and you feel wonderful. And in that state of feeling wonderful, your vortex is going to bleed into your mind. There's going to be a blending of what your inner being knows, and it's going to come into your mind. It might come across like a story. It might come across like a vision. We like to call it a daydream. It's just this soft daydream, not trying to make anything happen. It's just a daydream that just feels good as you allow yourself to let it happen.